My name is Darcy, and I'll be hosting this workshop that's leading up to the job fair. I have another section I teach as well. We're going to focus on this workshop in working on resume tips, CVs, and things like that. So the goals and topics, just to set, the scene: tips for resume writing, tips for cover letters, and searching for a job. One thing I'd like to call out right before I dive any further that's really helpful and a great asset. Indeed is a job board where you can check just different job postings, and they have an awesome tool for if you're starting your resume or even building off of a current resume, how to bulk it up. If that's something that you're working on currently, it'd be great for you to open that or take a look and have that kind of on the side while we're talking through each of these sections. Cool. So we'll start off with tips for resume writing. So this is the flow that we'll go through specifically for writing a resume. These are the sections that build out a good resume. You want to make sure you have your header, education and certifications, experience, volunteer experience, and any personal information. I also would like to say that the last three sections don't have to be there, but it's always great to supplement the first two sections with that information if you have it. Some basic must-haves for your resume is your first and last name, as well as your contact information. If you have an address, definitely provide that. An email address is an imperative. It's non-negotiable. And while we have this email address, something that's really important is to make sure that you have a first name, last name, or as close to that type of email address, just for professionalism. Also, it's easier for recruiters to find you and your contact information, let's say if they can't find you and trying to contact you, and your phone number if you have one as well. And you can see on the side here in this example how they have that information neatly stacked on the side. The image is cut off a little bit, but you can see that if you have your email address, you could potentially put it on the right side, right aligned on your resume, if you have too much information on the left. So you can definitely balance that. But these are just a couple things that are just a must-have to have within your resume. So moving on, we want to go to the education section. What degree did you get? Was it your high school diploma, associate of arts degree, any type of certifications, whether it's in something like food handling or child and adult CPR? These are all definitely things that you want to make sure are included within your resume. Another thing too that you definitely want to consider is that whoever might be reviewing your resume might not understand the coursework. So having a short synopsis or just a quick, even bulleted couple things to write down underneath your coursework is really important, just to shed a little bit of light for somebody who might not necessarily have experience in your certifications or education. For example, for child and infant CPR, infant first aid, adult CPR, emergency aid, those are a breakdown of maybe your degree or the certification you have, just a chunk of information to help someone understand a little bit better about your experience in terms of education. Cool. So another thing you want to explain is your experience, similar to how your education was. You want to make sure to define your role. Some examples would be childcare or babysitting, an office assistant, sales associate, and a brief explanation of your role. I think this is especially important just because I think sometimes a title can hold very singular meaning and a lot of meaning. Sometimes we do a lot more than our role asks of us, so you want to make sure that you're getting that credit for what you're doing, and whoever is reviewing your resume to understand that while you were a sales associate, you may have done XYZ other things that are equally as important in painting the picture of who you are as an employee and how you could fit in at this next company. So giving a little bit of information is always good to explain your role. So to further comment on your experience, you want to give some action examples. What did you do in that role that helped? Using action words is a really great way to do this. Tutoring children, grades K through 8, preparing meals, assisting in maintaining hygiene. These give a clear indication of what exactly was performed within that role, leaving no kind of gray area for whoever's reviewing your resume to understand what exactly you were doing within your time at a certain position. Another really great thing, if you do have the data to help with this, is quantifying the information or giving specific examples of how you helped. When I say quantifying, I mean assigning a number. So maybe a percentage of productivity, or maybe even like explaining the amount of people that you helped, how many customers that you helped. For example, 66% of children saw grade increases within 3 months. 4 children received complimentary reports from their teachers. Both of these are a great way to clearly illustrate your impact at a position. So if you have some kind of way to prop up the impact that you've had within a prior position, it's definitely like a great way to clearly show, hey, I've been able to maximize this certain area at my job. Cool. And again, just before I dive in this section, I just want to stress, definitely any of these next couple sections are definitely optional, but they're great to have, and I think can really show a lot of character as a person who's applying for a job. And also, I always say that like in an interview is a two-way street. And you want to make sure that even when you're sharing these things, hopefully maybe the company sees this and says, hey, we also care about whatever causes you volunteer for or things you care about. Those could be great ways to elucidate or shed light on where they stand even, if they pick up on those volunteer things that you have within your resume. So that can be something really important. Similar to the other sections, you want to make sure you explain what your role was. A couple examples of that are volunteer, technical volunteer, or even an animal support advocate. You want to make sure to explain what the organization does as well. The chances are that the recruiter probably doesn't necessarily know. There's so many awesome organizations out there doing great things, and just make sure to give like a quick explanation of what they do. For example, the Center on Halstead. Center on Halstead supports the LGBTQ plus community and allies in Chicago through educational programming. As well as the Humane Society, they help cats and dogs by providing safe shelter, medical care, and adoption services. Something that might be helpful if you're maybe not necessarily a strong writer is to maybe check the website of these organizations, and they usually have a short bio that you can probably copy and paste or even summarize a little shorter to get a verbatim or word by word explanation of these organizations' missions, just to make it easier to explain. Cool. So again, like the last section, we want to make sure that we do action examples, organized adoption papers for resident animals, assisted adopters in viewing and choosing adoptable animals. Definitely explain what a day-to-day or like a typical day rather would be in your volunteer role. This is a great way to, again, add more experience within your resume and really shape the picture for the recruiter of who they're talking to and who they might be potentially hiring. Cool. This is the last section within your resume, your personal section. So you can use this section to talk about anything else you've done that might be helpful. Some examples of that might be extra languages that you speak, computer skills, knowing software like Photoshop, Adobe Suite, Office Suite, Excel, etc., or more specific skills like budgeting. Definitely a great place on your resume to list this. You don't necessarily have to explain each of these. This can be more of like a bulleted style, but definitely make sure to include these, especially if they're parts of, you know, a job that you're applying for. Maybe knowing Spanish is something important for the next role you're applying for. It really helps a recruiter when they see that you have that listed. Awesome. So just moving on to some advice regarding the resume. Unless you're applying for a more senior role or you're applying to be a manager, a resume really shouldn't be beyond 2 pages. You can usually fit or edit your most recent jobs within 1 page. Recruiters usually are looking through a ton of resumes at one time. If there's any way to push your resume to the top, it's by having it be concise. When you have a LinkedIn page that's set up, make sure to put your resume on it so it's easy for anybody who's trying to connect with you to be able to reach it, or even filling out the same information so it feels concise and whoever's looking at your LinkedIn can also get the same information from your resume. Try using keywords from job postings within your resume. Something that's really awesome about this is that you might be able to structure your appeal to this company or whoever you're applying to. Let's say the job that you're applying to says, we're looking for somebody who's easygoing and flexible maybe you take the word flexible and somehow fit that within your resume, within some of the descriptions. That way you can see you guys are matching. You don't necessarily need to copy verbatim from whatever their job posting might be, but it does give like a great bridge for you to be able to connect with them. If you're not necessarily a strong writer, using bullet points is a really great way to go within your resume. And again, also that makes it easier for a recruiter to read through pretty quickly. Put any extra stuff you do, teams you're on, etc., in your personal section. If you're looking to fill out your resume more, trying a certification is really great, or taking extra classes at a community college or local community center. Those are really great ways to bolster and pad your resume, as well as volunteering to get more experience. There are so many ways that you can, again, like paint that picture and really explain who you are and what you care about by adding those couple things at the end. Cool. So just a couple things to avoid. You definitely don't want to put a photo on your resume unless you absolutely have to. That's more so intended for a job-seeking website like LinkedIn. You don't want to mention your age, gender, sex, sexuality, race, etc. Definitely not necessary in this situation. You don't want to make your resume too pretty with designs or too many decorative elements. You want to keep it as straightforward as possible. Again, similar to what I was saying before, copying and pasting from job advertisements, you can take inspiration from and pull certain words that feel connected, but definitely don't copy the exact same thing and paste it in your resume. They'll definitely notice that. I'm sure that they wrote it together as a team and you don't want to freak them out. You don't want to use graphics, graphs, or pictures. Something to explain about that is I've seen a trend within resumes where people will sometimes use, let's say I'm describing my skill as a public speaker, and I have a representation of it as a couple bars that are filled in. That could be confusing. Yeah, definitely just put text if you can. I know it's a weird one, but sometimes people will put graphs or charts to explain their skills or even their proficiency at certain skills. I think the safe thing to say is just don't use graphs. Put things that you feel strongly about on your resume. If you don't feel strongly about a certain skill, just leave it off. Like I said in this next point, don't put anything you're bad at. And definitely don't list your references. Those can be provided upon request. Recruiters usually, when you're moving along in the process, will just ask you, hey, can you send through a couple different references? It doesn't hurt to have those names and people you would reach out to ready, but definitely don't put them within your resume. Cool. So moving into tips for cover letters. So similar to the resume section, I'll walk us through a flow of what we'll cover. You have a header, 3 different paragraphs, and a sign-off. So some basic must-haves, again, is your first and last name, and then again, contact information, your address if you have one, absolutely 100% your email address, and your phone number only if you have one. Another great thing to do, just in case you don't necessarily know who you're reaching out to, the best way to address this letter in the beginning would be Dear Hiring Manager or Dear Recruiter, Dear Hiring Team. Any of those are great options. It's always best to research who you might be reaching out to, or maybe even if they're setting up your meeting with a person that you're having an interview with, they might provide you who you're meeting with. You can pop that in the Dear and so part of your letter. But if you're unsure, the best route to go are those couple suggestions. Awesome. So moving on to the first paragraph is your mission statement. Who are you? What position do you want, and why do you want it? Basically the exposition, the starting of this letter. I'm interested in this position at this company as advertised on this website or this job board. Sometimes recruiters will track where people found their listings or their postings. So it's important to key them in or give them a tip of where they found or you found them. Moving on to the next couple sentences. Why are you interested in the position? Make sure why you're interested relates to the skills that you have that make you qualified. So you're just building a case and an appeal to the recruiter at this point, why you're interested, the specific role that you're writing about. You want to make sure when you're writing the sentence that you have the correct role name within here. That can be really important as well. Just making sure that you're setting yourself up for success for the rest of this letter. Awesome. So moving on to paragraph 2 and 3, you want to explain any weaknesses. If you have any gaps in your employment, explain why by talking about the benefit you got from it. If you didn't go to school, what did you do instead? There's so many ways to fill this section and really, very similarly to the resume, build and paint that picture of who you are as a candidate. Maybe you studied abroad, or you lived overseas, or maybe you spent time volunteering or making art. There's so many ways to describe, and everybody has a different story. All are incredibly important and to put within this section. Tell your story. So who you are, why you're a good employee, what about you makes you interesting. Basically building a case for why they should like you and why you'd be a good candidate. One thing to make sure is to tether all of these statements back to the job that you're applying for. It's really easy to tell our stories, but a good way to guide us in writing about it is making sure that whatever we write can be connected to this job that we're applying for, and just using that as a test and a way to guide what you're writing. Cool. So moving on to paragraph 3, 4, or the conclusion. So we want to land the plane in this section. You basically are concluding your letter. You don't want to restate exactly what you said in the beginning, but you want to state why you're an asset to the company one last time, that you're excited to speak with them, give them your contact information one last time. Let's say again, like maybe your information is lost in the shuffle of them recruiting you. This is just one more place that you can put it. So maybe putting your email address and your phone number, if you have one, at the sign off at the end. And you want to sign sincerely and then your name, your first and last name. This way you're signing off perfectly, they have your contact information, and you're still restating that you're excited to apply for, whatever role that you're applying for. So moving on to some advice. Research the company and position that you're writing your letter to. This is really important. Any type of background and information you can get about where you're applying can really direct the way you write your letter and what areas you want to maybe be more detailed about. Let's say maybe you're looking to apply for something in hospitality, making sure maybe that you write about how much you care about working with people and helping people, that you're a people person. Like there's lots of ways to appeal based on whatever company you're applying to. Some basic grammatical things, you want to make sure that the beginning of each paragraph has an indent. To physically build these, we could definitely use that Indeed site, like I had mentioned at the beginning of the course, or Google Docs is really awesome, or Microsoft Word. Both of those actually do usually have a template that you can start popping in your information. So if you're a little bit daunted by designing the resume, there's some really great templates that all three of those feature. You want to use basic fonts like Arial, Helvetica, etc. Nothing too decorative. Those are really easy to use, and they're also fonts that are on both Macs and PCs. So for whatever reason, if a computer doesn't have a custom font, you don't want to have any technical errors by providing that. Similar to the resume, you want to keep your cover letter to 1 page only. Should be really quick, and you want to proofread. Have somebody, maybe 1 to 3 people, look at it. You never know, you could be missing something, or even the way that it reads tone-wise. It's always great to just have a second set of eyes on it, so it never hurts to do that. Awesome. So some things to avoid. You definitely don't want to repeat your resume. They've already seen that, so you want to give them something new. I think the CV is a really great way to be a little bit more elaborate in storytelling about yourself and your experience that you can bring to the table, whereas your resume is a lot more concise and a quicker read through. So let that be a guide for you. While we are telling our story, we don't want to get too personal. You can and you definitely should talk about your history, but you want to make sure to avoid talking about any past traumas or current issues that you're facing. In terms of page length, you don't want to go over 1 page, but you also don't want to go under 1 page. Typically, so what I mean by that is, think about a printer paper. So that's an 8.5 by 11 page. You want to make sure that it's a full page that's filled. We don't want to go half the page where half the page is missing. We want to just do our best to make sure that the full page has context and information, and then also not exceeding that to a second page. We don't want to decorate the page too much. It should be simple, like a letter. And don't use fun fonts or old fonts, Comic Sans or something silly like that. You want to make sure it's easy to read and professional as well. Cool. Awesome. So now we're moving to searching for a job. And I'll talk a little bit about some of the places I had actually mentioned within this course a little bit earlier in more depth. So these are a couple job board sites that are really great to check out if you're starting your search, or even if you've started your search already and you want to just check out some new places. These are some great places to check. And I have these listed in the order of how deep and vast they can be. So among all of these sites, I think LinkedIn is probably like the largest in terms of its breadth. You have the ability to view, search, and apply for jobs, network, share articles, and more. This is very much like a professional Facebook in a way. You have a profile that people can visit, you connect with people. There's a lot of activities that you can do within there. There's groups that you can reach out. If you like maybe work within design, you could join a design group and there's opportunities posted. You can message people about opportunities, see jobs, apply for them. It's really endless. It's a really great place to start. And I feel like the most types of jobs in every type of variety are posted through LinkedIn. Another really great place to check is Glassdoor. So something that differs between Glassdoor and LinkedIn, you can sign up with a profile, but there's not the same type of networking feature where you connect with people or message people, but you have the ability to view, search, and apply for jobs. But the really great thing about Glassdoor is that you can read and leave reviews about potential and past employers. Something that's really difficult about applying for jobs is sometimes we don't know the whole story or the picture about what it might actually be like to work there. And this is just invaluable insight in terms of before you get in there, getting a little bit more information about what the culture's, even sometimes interview questions are posted on there, salary ranges, so you know what to expect and be prepared to, bat for more or ask about where they stand in terms of like their biggest values. Glassdoor is awesome. And then moving on to the last one, Indeed is really great. It's a true job board. You don't have the reviews like you would in Glassdoor, and you definitely don't have the networking aspect where you have a profile, but you are able to apply for jobs. There's awesome tools on there as well. Like I had mentioned before, if you're looking to build out a resume, Indeed is really great. They have a tool in there that I would recommend that everybody check out. Cool. So this is something I can actually speak to more directly. I actually work for this company when I'm not volunteering. Something that's really awesome is staffing apps. So specifically, I work at Blue Crew. It's an on-demand staffing app where you're able to sign up for shifts at various different types of jobs. So that could be like a warehouse worker, picker, packer. I've seen so many different types of jobs posted on our app. But the really great thing about it is you have flexible shifts. You can sign up for the time that you want. By working through Blue Crew, you're considered a W-2 employee, which means that you're able to receive health care. So whether you're looking to sign up for it just for full-time or even for a little bit of time while you're searching for a job, it's awesome. I think it's a really great resource and you're getting the great benefit of healthcare as well. Cool. So a couple other job search websites that I'd recommend, or just places to check out. Some staffing agencies are really awesome. So these are within Chicago. LaSalle is one to check out if you're interested in office work. Mack & Associates is also office work. If you're looking to do any kind of legal work, Robert Half. Some groups online, as well as staffing agencies to check as well, would be Facebook groups. Google Jobs aggregates just different jobs all over the internet, and you're able to be redirected or apply through Google. Creative Circle and Artisan Talent, if you're a designer or creative, maybe a copywriter, art director, etc. Those are two really great websites to check out, and you can be sourced and signed up for contract gigs and things like that. And if you're more focused on tech-related jobs, Angel.co and Built in Chicago are both really great resources to look into for anything that's tech-related. Cool. So similar to the other sections, here's some advice. Within your profiles online, we want to make sure that you're using a smiling photo. You want to look friendly and approachable. You definitely don't want to use any Snapchat filtered photos. They might be cute, but there's another place for them, just not on a job search website or any type of job board. For yourself, you want to look up company reviews. Like I said, an interview is a two-way street. Just as much as a recruiter is actively interviewing you, you want to make sure you interview them as well. looking for a job is really important, but we want to make sure that we're happy at our job as well. So make sure to check that there's no like scathing reviews or things at least to look out for. Make sure to look up the name of the HR staff for your cover letter or email so it's easier to address it or find out who you might be speaking with. Look up salary ranges for that position if you can. Like I said before, Glassdoor sometimes provides that depending on company. When you do get to the part of an interview where they're asking you about maybe your salary band or range, ask more than what they offer or what you think they might offer. If they say no, that's 100% okay. But at least you asked. You always want to go to bat for yourself. Only unless you're truly out of range with what they're looking for will they probably dismiss you within your candidacy in the search. Something that I definitely 100% would recommend is keeping track of the jobs you apply for in a notebook or an Excel sheet online. I know that personally, when I've been applying for jobs, it can get very confusing very quickly because you're shooting out applications every day. You might be communicating with more than one person. So it's a great way to just centralize all that information. The date you applied, the salary for that job, the job title, who you connected with and who you're speaking with, the date you last contacted them. Even so, you're able to check, am I being ghosted or do I need to follow up on this? There's so many ways that tracking that information can be really important. Something that I would definitely recommend is putting your social media on private. That's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook when you're actively interviewing somewhere. Most likely they'll probably see you or find you. If you're a little bit concerned about them seeing that, I would just say during that time, make sure to put yourself on private. Don't call offices and definitely don't go to offices. They will make sure to reach out to you in both of those cases. It can be, again, like the job search is really hard and you want to get hired. Make sure that they call you first. We definitely don't want to break any laws by going into any offices we weren't invited to. So some things to avoid: never pay for a job, but never pay for someone to find you a job. So basically what this is relating to the most would be whenever you're working with like a staffing agency or a recruiter, the way that those places make their money is that companies pay them to source people. So by using them as a service, you as a candidate, $0. There should be no payment. It is just that just doesn't happen. So if anybody's asking you for any money to help source you in a job, run away, because that is not how that works. And I say this with a grain of salt, but you want to beware of Craigslist. There are a lot of really great opportunities, but some of them are too good to be true or just a scam. Definitely look, but take a little bit of caution when looking at Craigslist for any jobs. Cool. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you so much for coming. So we'll be able to access this later. Thank you again.